Hello everyone, myself Prakhar Virendra Saxena, and in this demo video I will be discussing a small topic, that is locomotion and movement. Now this chapter comes under the unit of human physiology, and it is one of the important system which deals with the human skeletal system. Okay, so this chapter locomotion and movement consists of two parts. In first part we will be discussing about human skeletal system, and in second part we will be discussing about the joints, that is arthrology, joints, and how we move with the help of these joints using weights, fulcrum and leverage. Okay. So before discussing our first topic, that is human skeletal system, we must understand some of the basic concept that comes from the chapter of animal tissue as well as animal kingdom. Okay. So I was talking about the skeletal system. Before starting skeletal system, we must understand from where does this skeletal tissue originate and what type of tissue is this. So as you all have studied that animal tissue, in chapter animal tissue, we know that animal body is made up of four type of tissues, right? First is the epithelial tissue. Second is the connective tissue. Third one is the muscular tissue. And fourth one is the nervous tissue. So now we have to dive deep inside the topic of connective tissue, because in connective tissue only this skeletal tissue arises, right? This connective tissue is further divided into three parts. Right? What are those? Loose connective tissue, dense connective tissue, and specialized connective tissue. Now, as you all know, you have studied earlier in this chapter that connective tissue is made up of matrix as well as fiber, right? Matrix and fiber. So, matrix is the ground substance in which fibers are dispersed, okay? And the amount of this fiber and matrix tells us whether the connective tissue is loose, dense, or if there are added mineral or specialized function, that connective tissue comes under specialized connective tissue. Okay. So what happen in loose connective tissue? In loose connective tissue, as the name suggests, there will be more amount of matrix and less number of fibers. Right? And loose connective tissue is further of two types. What are they? You all know. Basic. What? Areolar connective tissue. Right? And adipose connective tissue. Right? Now, dense connective tissue. As the name suggests, here fiber will be more and matrix will be less. So less ground substance and more fiber. This increases the density of connective tissue. Thus this is known as dense connective tissue. More fibers. Now this dense connective tissue is further divided into two types of tissue depending upon the arrangement of fibers. How these fibers are arranged? If the fibers are arranged in a regular fashion, regular manner, then this type of dense connective tissue is known as regular dense connective tissue, right? And if this fiber do not have any intricate, if these fiber do not arranged in an intricate manner, they are dispersed or scattered, then they are known as irregular connective tissue, right? Now, this specialized connective tissue, depending upon the special function which it is performing, is of two types. What? First is skeletal connective tissue, which we are dealing in this chapter, locomotion and movement, right? And other one is fluid or vascular connective tissue. Now understand this. As a skeletal system needs to perform heavy function, it needs to do locomotion, it needs to carry on your weight, so this skeletal connective tissue is mineralized in nature. It is highly mineralized, means here the calcium and phosphates are enriching this tissue so that it can hardens and with its stand different weights which you need to carry. So this tissue has high tensile strength, right? This skeletal connective tissue has high tensile strength because it needs to carry weight. It needs to be strong, right? Whereas vascular connective tissue is fluid in nature. It needs to connect one point of your body to another, one organ of your body to another, right? In the cardiovascular system, you study about the conduits, right? The pipelines which are there in the body, and the fluid which is traveling inside those conduits, those blood and lymph. Okay. Now, here plasma as well as serum we study under blood itself. Okay, these are the part of blood. But lymph is all different type of vascular tissue. Whereas in skeletal connective tissue we studied about bones and cartilage. Okay. In skeletal connective tissue we study about bones and cartilage. Now let's move further inside the topic. Bones and cartilage. First of all, we'll cover the basic. Okay. What do you mean when you say we are studying bones? Right. So, study of bones is known as osteology. Now this word is Neo-Latin in origin. It comes from Greek word osteik logos. Okay, these are the Greek words and they are combined together into Latin and then Neo-Latin origin to form osteology. Okay, so osteik means etymology of this word. Then this word is Greek in origin. Okay, and this word simply means to study bones. Okay, so study of bones is known as osteology, study of joints is known as arthrology, right? This term arthro you have come across under the topic arthropoda itself, right? Arthropoda, joint appendages. Okay, so arthro means joints, right? Now what are the parts of bones? This at least you need to know, then only you can understand each and every bone itself which is there in the body, right from the calcaneus up to the frontal. Okay, so a bone consists of two ends and a long shaft. So not each and every bone is like this. In generally we divide bones into two types. One is the small bone and other one is the long bone. So long bone is the standard of study which we study. Okay, this is in diagram of long bone, not a short bone. So in a long bone you will find two ends and one long shaft, whereas in short bone there is no such shaft. Now the end of this long bone is known as epiphysis. Epiphysis. Right next to epiphysis lie the region of osteoclast and osteoblast activity. Right, these are two types of cells, osteoclast and osteoblast cells. Okay, so the region of their activity lies next to the epiphysis, and this region is known as metaphysis. And a long shaft that join both ends is known as diaphysis. Diaphysis. Right. Rest you have studied in the animal tissue, Haversian canal, Waxman canal, right? All these things. Also the layer of bones. You all know what is the outermost layer of this bone? It is covering the periphery, thus periphery of the bone, periphery of the ostium. So it is known as periosteum. Whereas the layer inside this bone is known as endosteum. Endo means inside, right? Endosteum. So these are the part of bone in general. Now let's move toward our topic, main topic, that is the human skeletal system. Now, skeletal system or in general skeleton is of two types, right? What if the skeleton or skeletal system is situated outside the body of an organism, that is known as exoskeleton. Exoskeleton. Whereas the skeletal system which is situated inside the body of an organism is known as endoskeleton. Endoskeleton. Now, a common question arises: from which part of the embryonic layer does this exoskeleton or endoskeleton arises? So, if you want to answer that question, that is pretty much simple. You need to know whether the exoskeleton or endoskeleton, where these are situated. Okay, so as the name suggests, exoskeleton is outside the human body or outside the organism body, like hair, hoofs, nails. Okay, and apart from that, what? Shells of tortoise and turtle, right? All this form exoskeleton. Apart from that, what? Horn can also be included in exoskeleton. Now this exoskeleton is ectodermal in origin. This exoskeleton is ectodermal in origin. Now what comes under endodermal? Oh, endoskeleton. Sorry. So in endoskeleton lies all the bones and cartilage which are inside the body of an organism. Okay. So now the question arises, from where does the endoskeleton rises? It rises from the mesoderm. Okay, so it is of mesodermal origin. Right, just like blood. Okay, all the glands, liver, thyroid itself, these are endodermal in origin. Nervous tissue is ectodermal in origin, just like exoskeleton. Whereas blood, your endoskeleton, it is mesodermal in origin. Okay, so now when we know that skeleton is of two types, exoskeleton and endoskeleton, in human skeletal system, we mainly study what? Endoskeleton. In this chapter, we won't be studying about the hair, the structure of hair, nor we are studying about the nail or structure of nail bed, from where does this nail arises, right? In this topic, we should focus solely on endoskeleton. Now, endoskeleton of humans. Right? Homo sapiens sapiens, endoskeleton of Homo sapiens sapiens. While studying this skeletal system of human beings, you will come across two important words. One is axial skeleton and other one is appendicular skeleton. Now to understand these two terms and to differentiate easily in between these two terms, you should know about the planes of human body, how we divide human body into different planes. We'll make a stick diagram here. This will help you to understand that how many different planes we use to divide human body and how we name this axial skeleton and appendicular skeleton. Now this is an stickman, always smiling, right? So if I divide this organism into upper half and lower half like this in a slice section, this slice is known as transverse section. What we call it as transverse section, TS, right? If I cut human body like this into right half and left half, right from this midline, then this is known as mid-sagittal plane. Okay, this is transverse section and the plane is transverse plane. This is mid-sagittal plane. Any plane which is parallel to this mid-sagittal plane is known as sagittal plane. What do we call it as? Sagittal plane, right? And if I cut human into dorsum half and ventral half, into dorsal half and ventral half like this, then this plane is known as coronal plane. What we name it as? Coronal plane. This is coronal plane. Now why I have discussed this? See, any bone which is directly situated on the mid-sagittal plane or is in the direct relation with mid-sagittal plane comes under axial skeleton. Okay, this is the concept. Any bone which lies on the mid-sagittal plane or is in the direct relationship to mid-sagittal plane will come under what skeleton? Axial skeleton. Okay. And any bone which lies far from this mid-sagittal plane and is not directly associated with mid-sagittal plane comes under appendicular skeleton, right? Up now in NEET there will be direct questions. Okay, we have discussed direct questions, so many direct questions right now, like the differentiation of connective tissue, examples of irregular connective tissue, adipose connective tissue. This come directly too often in exam. Every second, third year these questions will come. Now there arises a direct question in NEET that how many bones are there in axial skeleton or in appendicular skeleton. For that, firstly you must know how many bones are there in a human, in an average adult, in fetus. Okay, so in fetus prior to delivery, right, there are around 306 bones. Now at the time of birth, the number of these bones come down to 270 bones. Okay, and as you grow and mature into an adult, number further come down to 206 bones. Now why this number is coming down? Because the bones are fusing, right? So you can take an easy example, like when a newborn is there, so you can feel that that newborn do not have any knee. Okay, that do not have any knee joint. The patella is not till yet. These are the example of what type of bones? Sesamoid bones, which we will discuss later in this chapter, right? Like the pisiform or the patella. These are the sesamoid bone, which will be solidifying after some time. Okay, so in an adult there lies 206 bones. Many bones fuse together to form this number. Now, how many will be in axial skeleton? How many will be in appendicular skeleton? There is a short trick which can help you in exam to remember. Okay. Think of your phalanges or finger as a skeletal system or as bones, right? Now, how many fingers are on the direct axis of your palm? How many fingers? 4, right? This thumb is not on the axis of your palm. Your palm axis is like this, and this thumb is outside that axis. So these 4 fingers are on the axis. So you think of it like this, right? So 4 here, 4 here. How many? There are 8 phalanges. Okay. And if you need to calculate your height using your hand, what you will do? You will calculate like this. Okay. So when you calculate like this, right from your ankle up to the top of head, it will be around 10 times. You have to count like this, around 10 times. So it adds as it is easy as you require 10 times this much length, and you have 4 here, 4 here, 8. So 8 into 10 comes 80 directly. Or you can simply remember that there are 8 fingers which are on the axis of your palm. So there are 80 bones in axial skeleton. And rest you can easily find out. 206 minus 80 comes under 6 to 1. Right? 126 bones under appendicular skeleton. So now we'll move to the individual bones. Okay, and that we'll be discussing later on in the chapter. Hope you find this video interesting and it can help you giving at least 4 or 5 answers of previous year questions. This video is covering at least 4 or 5 previous year questions plus the information. So hope you find it interesting. Thank you very much.